If you've watched my channel during the past week, you'll know that I've been doing something called the Stronghold Challenge. If you don't know what that is, the Stronghold Challenge is where you have to try and beat Minecraft in a void world with only a floating stronghold. This challenge is much harder than it looks because you have to be in hardcore mode while doing it, and my last video ended in a crushing defeat. But did that stop me from spending an insane number of hours trying again? No, it didn't. Since that video, I failed many times, and through trial and error, I found the best ways to overcome each part of the challenge. Also, there's no live commentary on this video because I failed so many times and I couldn't keep saying the same intro over and over again. So after all those failures, I finally got good at this challenge. So I spawned into the world and immediately went down to break the door near the entrance of the portal room. You may have noticed that I broke a few other blocks as well, and that's because I'm gonna need to get back on top of the portal room later. The next step is to parkour to this little area here. And then we just have to wait for nighttime. The reason for this is that we need at least 3 blocks to parkour over to the library room. And the only way to get 3 blocks is to have a creeper explode and give them to me. So after a while, I finally saw the creeper spawn on top of the portal room and I made my way towards it. This part was a bit chaotic with all the mobs, but I ended up surviving and using the 3 blocks to parkour to the next platform. After that, I took the chests and then used them to parkour to the library. Once I was at the library, I began looting it for wooden planks and string, and then I went back to the portal room to destroy the spawner. I had used some of the string I got from the library room to make a fishing rod, and then I used that to get some food from the fountain. Also, I accidentally wasted one of my ender pearls from the chests when I tried to reel in the fishing rod. Luckily, the ender pearl didn't land anywhere because I would have died from the impact. After that, I used some stone bricks to redirect the water flow from the fountain towards the lava from the portal room. This would be my cobblestone generator. After that, I started mining cobblestone because I would need to make a mob grinder. Every time the sun went down, I immediately went to sleep, and when I woke up, I ran back to the generator to continue mining. This went on for a number of days, or about an hour in real life, until I finally had 15 stacks of cobblestone. Then I got some more resources from the library rooms and cleared out the area where I was going to make the mob grinder. If you remember from my previous video, the part of this challenge that I was stuck on was getting the 3 iron ingots needed to make a bucket, because that's the only way to get to the nether. And the only way I could get iron in this challenge was from a rare 2.5% chance when killing a zombie. The last time I tried to make a mob grinder in this challenge, it was way too dangerous, and I ended up dying because of how overwhelming it was. So after that happened, I went on a new world and tested some better mob grinder designs. I tried a lot of designs and most of them were terrible because for mob grinders you usually need water to make the mobs fall towards the center. But after some research and testing many designs, I found one which worked very well. So the first step was to build a platform 21 blocks off the ground. This was because when the mobs dropped to the bottom, I could one-shot them with a sword. Now you might be asking, why didn't I make it any higher so the mobs would automatically die from fall damage? Well, the reason I didn't do that is zombies can only drop iron when they're killed directly by a player. So even though it would be convenient to have the mobs fall to their death, it wasn't an option if I wanted to get iron. After making the base of the grinder, I continued to build upwards, making sure I had the exact layout I tested in other worlds. Once I was at the top, I used the wool I made from the cobwebs in the library rooms to make carpets. These weren't ordinary carpets though, because they're double layered. The reason I use double carpets like this is because for some reason, mobs won't actually see it as a full block, so they walk straight past it and into the hole. I then built the floor of the grinder out of cobblestone slabs to save on resources, and this was done 6 blocks out in each direction. I then went up 4 blocks and made the roof out of slabs as well. Once that was done, I placed slabs on every 3rd block of the grinder to spider-proof the area. And when that was done, I placed the final trapdoors around the hole. Then I headed back down and waited for the grinder to start working. When I first made this mob grinder in a different world, I ran some tests and I found out that on average it gave about 5 mobs per minute, which means I would get about 300 mobs per hour. If a quarter of those mobs were zombies, so let's say 75, and there's a 2.5% chance to get an iron ingot from them, it means that I should get about 1.8 iron ingots per hour. So in less than 2 hours, I should have the 3 ingots needed to make a bucket. This is by no means the best mob grinder, but it's very compact and efficient for the resources I had access to. While I waited for the mobs to fill up, I did some fishing. At this point, I was now the master of the Stronghold, and after all the times I died to mobs in the past, I could finally relax. It seemed like nothing could go wrong, until it did. I was returning to the mob grinder after doing some fishing, and I decided to crouch to get a better look. But it turns out that was a really bad idea, because a creeper also fell at that exact same time, and because it was in my line of sight, it exploded. I quickly tried to patch up the holes, but mobs were already dropping down, and this had the potential to flood the entire area. I managed to seal up most of the holes, but the mobs had knocked me off the platform. After swimming back up, I could see more and more mobs had gathered at the bottom of the grinder. Luckily, I realized that they were all a one-shot kill, so it wasn't too hard to take care of them. After that incident, I secured the area better, so that no mobs could knock me off if another outbreak happened. When that was all over, it was back to business as usual, mining cobblestone, fishing, and killing mobs at the grinder. Around half an hour later, something awesome happened. I finally got my first iron ingot. This was proof that the grinder was working as intended, and I was now feeling much better about completing this challenge. One other thing I didn't mention about this mob grinder is that it spawns endermen as well. This makes getting eyes of ender much easier, and it's good to have extra ender pearls when traveling anywhere. 5 minutes after the first iron ingot, I ended up getting a second one from another zombie. I also got another ender pearl as well, which was one step closer to completing this challenge. But even though I was close to having a bucket, the next iron ingot was taking a very long time to obtain. I ended up making some renovations around the platform, and also a small house to sleep in while I waited to get the last one. After some more waiting, I finally obtained the last ingot. Using all 3 of them, I made a bucket, and then I went to sleep in real life because I'd spent all day on this challenge, but at least I was now ready to go to the Nether. I logged back in the next day and started bringing lava from the end portal room towards the grinder. I thought it would be a good idea to have everything in one place, so I didn't have to travel to get to the Nether portal. After the portal frame was completed, the next step was to light it. Since I didn't have flint and steel, I would need to use the lava method. This is done by putting lava next to wooden planks and waiting for a random fire to ignite the portal. It took some tries, but eventually I got the portal to light. Before I could go to the Nether, I had to bring some cobblestone, so I used the bucket to make a smaller and safer cobblestone generator right next to the portal. After getting some cobblestone, I also gathered some more resources from the libraries, and then I was ready to go to the Nether. Now you may be wondering why the Nether is just a floating fortress. The reason for that is that originally the Nether was going to be normal, but I was told by a viewer who tried this challenge that no fortresses actually generated. This was because structures were off to make this challenge a void world, so it was impossible to get a fortress to spawn in the Nether. The easiest fix to this was simply making the Nether only be a floating fortress, and this was actually much harder than having a normal Nether, because mobs had nowhere to spawn except on the fortress, so every part of it was covered in skeletons, piglins, and pigmen. The first step was to secure the portal, because it was floating above an empty void. I went back to the overworld and brought a bow with me so I could take care of the piglins. After that, I went back to the overworld again to grab some extra materials, and then returned to the Nether. I got onto the fortress this time, and I made a barricade to have a safe area. That was until I realized that piglins can actually open doors, which put an end to that idea. I ended up going back to the overworld one last time to get some more resources, and then I started making my way through the fortress. I left a trail of torches so I wouldn't get lost, and eventually I found a blaze spawner. After some grinding, I finally got the 6 blaze rods needed to make 12 eyes of ender. Once I was back in the overworld, I made 7 eyes of ender, which was good, but I still needed 5 more to get to the end. This means that I would have to wait for the grinder to spawn more endermen. Endermen spawned more rarely than the other mobs, so this process did take a bit to complete. I also had an idea where I would put lava in the mob grinder to make the mobs automatically die, but it ended up making endermen even harder to kill, so I removed that. About an hour later, I had 11 eyes of ender, and I finally killed the last enderman to get the 12th eye. And with that, I got all 12 eyes ready and opened up the end portal. Before I entered the end, there were still a few things I wanted to do. I wanted to get a couple more ender pearls just in case I needed them during the dragon fight. I also repaired the broken bows from the mob grinder, and I gathered stacks of arrows from skeletons to take down the end crystals. Finally, I made sure I had enough food to keep me going through the fight, and I also managed to get another ender pearl during this time. One more important thing I did was fill the bucket up with water and take it with me, in case I needed to fall from a high place. After finding another ender pearl, I had all the resources I needed. So I walked into the end portal and got ready to fight. I immediately made a little safe spot in case I needed to hide from endermen, and then I pillared up to destroy the end crystals. I did the same thing on the other side of the island as well, and at this point most crystals were destroyed. The ones with the iron bars were also quite easy to destroy, as there were gaps where my arrows could get through. But there was still one more end crystal, and this one was located on the highest obsidian pillar. So I made my way up to go and destroy it, but no matter how much I tried, I kept missing all the shots. The dragon noticed me and started swooping, and this was where I made my biggest mistake. Instead of ender pearling to the ground, I decided to fall into the water, which was at the same time the dragon was flying towards me. This caused me to get knocked off the end island, and even with my ender pearls, I couldn't save myself. After all that, I ended up falling into the void and dying. I know this isn't the ending you all wanted to see, and I really wanted to beat the dragon as well, but I have to be completely honest and say that this challenge is very tiresome to do. Getting this far took many failed attempts and multiple days of playing, and I don't really have that much time anymore to dedicate to doing it again, especially since it's on hardcore mode and you have to restart the whole challenge if you die. So I'm gonna shelve this challenge for now and come back to it in the future, but it is possible, and if anyone wants to try and beat it, you can download it in the description. So yeah, I wanted to be honest about what happened in this challenge, and you can't always win every time. I will try it again sometime in the future, but for now, thank you all for watching up until this point. This challenge has been a long journey, but I have many more video ideas that I want to try. So with that, I'll see you all next time.